I'm John Petty, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Growing Up in Flip Flops. I grew up in the Methodist Church, and at the time, the Methodist Church is, or at least the conference that we were in, I would describe as high Methodist. And by that, I mean that they were very formal, in that the pastors, when they were presiding over a service, wearing full robes and had, I guess the term is vestments around their neck hanging. The entire choir was robed. When the pastors entered, they were not up at the front near the altar. To begin with, they came in from the back of the church in a procession, and they were led by a couple middle school kids carrying a pole with a candle attached at the top. Those kids were referred to as acolytes. I had been an acolyte. Their job was simply to precede the pastor during the processional, and there were a couple candles up at the altar, and to light those candles, these poles with a light on the end had a little slide on it and a bell on another section that after you had lit the candle, you simply pulled the slide down. That extinguished the candle. Put down your, I don't know what else to call it, but a pole, and sat in the very front row during the service. When it ended and the pastor came down from his dais, podium, where he had delivered the sermon and presided over the service, he came down. As an acolyte, you were to stand up and walk up using the bell on the pole, pick up the pole, and using the bell, extinguish the candles. Then turn around, precede the pastor out the back to the back of the church where the pastor would stand and greet people as they left the service. Well, how'd you get to be an acolyte? Well, I think in my memory, it had all been boys, middle school kids. I think the big qualifying point to become an acolyte was some kind of assurance that the kid was going to show up on Sunday, so that parents were actually, known that the kid was going to be there. I think that was the biggest qualifying thing. But I will tell you, for at least parents, it had to be a point of pride that their son was an acolyte, and all the other parents saw it. And, I saw Jimmy and Bobby and Johnny were an acolyte. Oh, Mrs. Smith, you must be so proud. But I think later they became co-ed. It was basically limited to middle school kids that were doing this. The reason I'm bringing all this up is basically as a backstory. I was just thinking the other day about how much things have changed. When men attended church, they were generally in coats and ties. Today, at least here in Madison, Wisconsin, attending church, there are people in shorts and Crocs, and you're lucky they're not wearing an "I'm with stupid" t-shirt. I remember about 10 years ago, a pastor, this was at a non-denominational church, forget the robes or anything like that. The pastor was up there in a collared shirt and khakis. I remember one Sunday he was there with his shirt untucked, and I just remember that wow, that's something I haven't seen. Well, now if you attend a service at a church that has college students that attend it, I'm very, very serious. The pastor is probably wearing a t-shirt with a hoodie and cargo pants and some sort of Nike Air Jordans that are unlaced, and what a complete change. And I was thinking about this the other day. What my mother's, if my mother suddenly awoke from a coma and saw church services today, what her reaction would be, apart from being completely aghast and saying, is this really a church service, or what's going on here? I laughed when I thought about that. My mother's reaction would probably be, you know, I could see this coming when they started playing guitars in a service. The road to perdition. I'm certain that my mother could have seen the entire event, or the events unfold, simply from that moment when they brought acoustic guitars into the church service and were singing Kumbaya or something like that, and saying, this certainly isn't a Charles Wesley hymn. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you.